Hi everyone, this is Ashby from Positivity Peddler, and I'm coming in today to make a resin tutorial. I wanted to try a couple different things with dried flowers. The flowers that I'm using today are a combination of different ones, dried in different ways. I have a powder, a silica powder, called Activa. I'll put a link in the description. But I use that to dry my flowers. I'll post a video at another time with the process for that, but it makes them look really pretty. I've also ordered some on Amazon, which I can put a link in the description for as well. And my son actually brought me some that have kind of sat out and dried up a little bit. So I've got them here too, just because they kept their color pretty well. So I wanted to try them, see what they turn out like. And I've got a lot of different options here to try. I like to do different dried flower jewelry. So all of these are really great options for me. Now, for this project, you're going to need to have a 2-part epoxy resin. And for cleanup, if you get any of it anywhere, I use a Goof Off product. We've got a pair of scissors. We've got our timer. Some food coloring, which is optional for the coloring of the resin. I like to use a lot of clear, but I also like to have the option, so we've got blue just in case. I've got some small bottles to use, some filler, glitter. We chose black and pink today, and some gold flakes. Pretty bright. We've got our resin already mixed up here, ready to mix together, or poured out rather, ready to mix together. We've got a few different molds. I chose a larger ball and a smaller ball, and some beads, some different bezels. And we've also got a couple of the molds that we used from our previous video where we made them homemade. If you want to see how we made it, go ahead and check out the video. I'll put the link in the description as well, or you can find it on my playlist too. We've got a little bit of white paint because I've got an idea I want to try, and different tools to grab the flowers with. There's a link for them in the description as well, but they look something like this. If you don't have these kind of things, don't worry, tweezers would work just fine, or you can even use your fingers. I've got a dropper for the resin, something to stir with. This could be any sharp object, a safety pin, anything that you want to use. We've got some stir sticks and a paintbrush for that white paint. Now for this video, I've got the resin ready to mix together. I've got it pre-measured. We've got one here, one here, and we've got a timer for 1 minute. Now again guys, when you're mixing resin, you want to make sure that you've got a face mask or a respirator so that you're not breathing the fumes in from this. Even if it doesn't really feel like you're breathing in fumes, there are fumes when you're mixing this up and when it's curing. So if you have breathing problems or anything like that, make sure that you're wearing a respirator, or maybe avoid doing projects like this, or just be really careful. And as far as skin exposure, make sure you've got the gloves on. And we've got a timer. Now each resin is a little bit different. There's different mixing. There's different times for curing. With this one, it's 1 part to 1 part. and we mix for 1 minute in the containers. So I'm going to mix this one into this container. Make sure when you're mixing them together to scrape the sides. And the bottoms so that we get all of the product out of the cup. Now that we've got it in the cup, we're going to start our timer for 1 minute, and we're going to mix for 1 minute. With this batch, I'm only going to pour a thin layer out into some of these because I've got some ideas as far as designs. So I'm going to start first with my bezels, and I'm just going to lay a thin layer of clear resin down. Now on the bottom of these bezels, I've used a cling wrap, Lab brand. You can find it in the grocery store, but you can also order it on Amazon. And on Amazon, they come in a 3-pack, so it's pretty cool. I'll put a link for that down in the description. But the nice thing about that product is that it sticks to the back of these, and it holds the resin really well, so I can do multiple pieces on one. Now again, I just want to put a real thin layer down, make sure that it touches the edges all the way around. And then we're going to let that dry. And when it's dry, we're going to put our details in. So on all of these, we're just going to put a real thin layer. With these ones, I'm going to let that first layer dry. I've got a couple details that I want to put in there, but I'm going to pour this resin into the other molds, and then I'll get started with adding the details that I can add at this point. So for this one, I got this glow-in-the-dark Play-Doh at Big 5 a while back, and I've been wanting to try it in a resin piece just to see how it stands up during the curing process. So we'll try it out today. We'll try a few different experiments, I guess, right? Got a little bit of that in there, and then we'll put a little bit of it in the other one. Now, if you watched my last resin video, I kind of learned my lesson as far as the amount of dough or clay to put into a piece. It was with these molds too, so I'm not putting a whole bunch in there. And hopefully it'll turn out a little bit different. Alright, got those in there. And then I'm going to fill this one up. Actually, you know what? Maybe we'll take this out and pour just a little bit of the resin in first. And maybe that'll make it turn out a little better. I'm going to try it that way this time. It's worth mentioning too that I'm not using a silicone mold release or any kind of mold release agent, because I found that with the silicone molds, and especially these molds that we made ourselves, the pieces actually come out fairly easy. So I'm just going to twist this around so that the resin is coating the whole bottom of the mold. And then we'll stick this back in there. Not too much pressure because I don't want it to make too big of a hole in the front of that resin. Same thing with this one. We'll just stick it in there real lightly. And then we're going to put a couple different things in there here in just a moment. The next thing that I need to do, we'll start on the bottom of this one. I'm just trying to think of which order is the best way to do this, because I've got a couple different plans here. So what I did is pour just a little bit of the resin into this big ball. And then I'm going to do the same thing into the smaller one, just a tiny bit. Now, let's see. So I think I'm going to start with these guys here. I'm going to use some of these petals. And just stick them in there. See how well that turns out. And then on the other one, I'm going to use just some of this. It looks like baby's breath. I'll stick that around the edge. We got those pieces. And then with this bigger ball, I have some pretty flowers that I want to try to make stand upright. So what I'm going to do is get this bottom layer set up into the resin, because if I put too much resin into this mold at once, the items that I want to be displayed inside of it will float and they won't look as nice. So we're going to start with one layer at a time. I'm going to put that green on the bottom, and I've got just a few rocks here that I wanted to put in there, along with a piece of wood. Pour just a little bit of this resin on top of the moss that we added, just to help this log stick. So that's how it looks so far. And then we're going to add a few rocks around this side. I'll try to make sure that they stay in from the edge, because we don't want our edge to be irregular if we can help it. So try to keep them centered into the mold. I've got that in there. That's going to be my first layer there. So we'll wait on that. And then for the little one, I also want to use a little tiny bit of this green at the bottom. And then after that sets up, I'm going to add a flower on top of it. So for these ones, I can actually add the resin now. So I'm going to cover this one in a layer of resin. I've also got some wax paper just underneath of these resin molds to make sure that I don't get a mess on my work surface. One thing you want to do, I have this sharp object that I can use to pop the bubbles with. I want to use it first though, before I get any resin stuff on it, to try to make this piece in these bezels. These ones, I just want to use a glitter design. Alright everybody, we're back now with our cured resin. Let's just take a look and see how the pieces turned out with our various assortment of dried flowers. Remember, we had some dried flowers from Amazon, we had flowers that I dried myself, and we had flowers that hadn't really been dried, they'd just been left sitting out. So I'm interested in seeing how they kept their color during the resin curing process. So let's take a look at some of the pieces that we made. I think we can sum it up by saying multiple different methods for drying flowers works. It just depends on what the kind of pieces that you're making and what your intentions are for it, what the best method you should use would be. For me, I think that I really like the way that the flowers that I dried using the silica turned out, mostly because they're 3D. You can see that they're not flat, they popped up, and I really like that about it. But the dried flowers that we got from Amazon also held their shape really well, and the color that they've got is still a lot brighter than some of the ones that had no drying process. Now, if you have any tips or tricks or anything like that that you might want to share, I've got a lot of subscribers that share those in the comments down below. So feel free to share any ideas that you might have, any projects that you want to see me try, anything like that down in the comments below. And as always, like and subscribe to the video so you can keep watching. And I appreciate you guys. Thank you. Bye.